An old cowboy got me aside one day. He said, "Don't worry about finding a woman, Rod." He said, "They're kind of like cow pies. The older they get, the easier they are to pick up." So, that's just what he told me. Now, what did I know about it? And I'm a little spooked, you know. I've got to have a wedding anniversary coming up on the 25th. That's soon now, isn't it? Well, I tell you what, that's hard to get along with that woman sometimes. I don't know, I get her aggravated now and then. And if you're clever with talking, you can get your way out of those situations. But sometimes talking won't work. And you have to buy a gift. And God, that's troubled me for most of my life, because birthdays, anniversaries, Christmas, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, all of those things have struck terror into my heart. And now I have an anniversary coming up, and I haven't bought her anything yet. You might say I was ignorant, or at best a simple louse, when it came to buying birthday gifts or presents for my spouse. That jewelry, I was hopeless. And though she never said a peep, if it fit into my budget, it always looked so cheap. Besides, that stuff's unhealthy. Just to tell you what I mean, the last ring I gave her turned her finger green. Perfume that I have purchased was money poorly spent. Shucks, I couldn't tell a cheap one from a $7 cent. I tried to buy her furniture at auction sales and such, but she managed to convince me that I didn't have the touch. Clothes also weren't the answer. I of little wit just seemed to raise her dander when I bought her jeans that fit. I carpeted our bathroom and almost caused a fight. She said, "You should have built a sidewalk to it so I could find it late at night." Well, I finally realized what I'd been doing, and my spirits really sunk. I'd been wasting hard-earned money on some mighty worthless junk. Well, I'm glad I've gained the wisdom that middle age brings. I've learned to give my missus only useful things. It's been a dandy system. And another of my views, doesn't hurt to give her things that I can also use. Like that tow rope that I gave her. Now, that was really smart. She always gets to use it when my tractor fails to start. She seems to love these practical gifts. I'm sure that is the case. It's truly mighty evident by the expressions on her face. I bought her a brand new gooseneck horse trailer with money from our home improvement fund. She looked so darned excited, you might say she was stunned. And that hand-tooled rope and saddle, you know, I'm really too darn nice, but when it comes to buying for my missus, I don't quibble over price. Just imagine her amazement. I'm bound to be a hit and sure to be her Valentine when she sees that silver-mounted bit. This has made making up a pleasure. After arguments and tiffs, well, once I'd have ignored her, now I shower her with gifts. There's a lesson to this story, for I've come to believe that the joy is in the giving and not what we receive. Thank you.
Like Rodney, I was introduced to poetry by my mother. She read poetry to me when I was old enough to understand. A lot of Eugene Field's poems like Winking, Blinking, and Nod, and so I was kind of exposed to poetry very early, and then my freshman year of high school, I had a wonderful literature teacher. Her name was Miss Anita Welch, and Miss Anita was just out of college, and she was 22, and she was single, and she was beautiful, and I had a horrible crush on her. I don't know how public school is now. We had to memorize a certain number of lines of poetry and recite before the class each year, and because I had this crush on Miss Anita, I really wanted to impress her, and she assigned us all the task of memorizing at least 20 lines and reciting them before the class. Are you familiar with a poem by Edgar Allan Poe titled The Raven? It's a piece that's several pages long, but I wanted very much to impress Miss Anita, so I memorized The Raven. And I told her that's the one I would like to do, and she says, "Well, that's fine. You can do half of it today and the last half tomorrow. But anyway, a couple of years later, I had another wonderful literature teacher. She was not 22, and she was not at all attractive. In fact, she was quite unattractive, and she'd come stomping into class in a flower print dress, and it reminded me of a couple of bear cubs scuffling under a wagon sheet when she came into class. But she had a great love of poetry, and I remember her coming into class in tears one day, and she cried off and on for 3 days because our poet laureate, Carl Sandburg, had passed away. And so I thought, gosh, this poetry is really important to her, and it's become that way with me. And I often pull these poems out that I learned back in school, which I'll do now. A piece written by Stephen Vincent Benet, titled The Ballad of William Sycamore. My father, he was a mountaineer. His fist was a knotty hammer. He was quick on his feet as a running deer, and he spoke with a Yankee stammer. My mother, she was merry and brave, and so she came to her labor with a tall green fir for her doctor grave and a stream for her comforting neighbor. Some are wrapped in linen fine, and some like a godling scion. I was cradled on twigs of pine in the skin of a mountain lion. And some remember a white starched lap and a ewer with silver handles. I remember a coonskin cap and the smell of bayberry candles. Cabin logs with bark still rough, and a mother who laughed at trifles, and tall, lank visitors, brown as snuff, with long, straight squirrel rifles. I can hear them dance like a foggy song through the deepest one of my slumbers. Fiddles squeaking the boots along, my father calling the numbers, quick feet shaking a puncheon floor, fiddles squealing and squealing till dried herbs rattled above the door and dust rose up to the ceiling. There are children lucky from dawn to dusk, but never a child so lucky. I cut my teeth on money musk in the bloody ground of Kentucky. When I grew tall as the Indian corn, my father had little to lend me, but he gave me his great old powder horn and his woodsman's skill to befriend me. With a leather shirt to cover my back and a redskin nose to unravel each forest sign, I carried my pack as far as a scout could travel, till I lost my boyhood and found my wife, a girl like a Salem clipper, a woman straight as a hunting knife with eyes as bright as the dipper. We cleared our camps where buffalo feed, unheard of streams were our flagons, and we sowed our sons like apple seed on the trail of the western wagons. They were right tight boys, never sulky or slow, of a fruitful and goodly muster. The eldest died at the Alamo. The youngest fell with Custer. The letter that told it burned my hand, yet we smiled and said, so be it. But I could not live when they fenced the land, for it broke my heart to see it. I saddled a red unbroken colt, and I rode him into the day there. He threw me down like a thunderbolt and rolled over me as I lay there. A hunter's whistle hummed in my ear as city men tried to move me, and I died in my boots like a pioneer, the whole wide sky above me. Now I lie in the heart of the fat black soil like the seed of a prairie thistle. It has washed my bones with honey and oil and picked them clean as a whistle. And my youth returns like rains of spring, and my sons like wild geese flying, and I lie and hear the meadowlark sing and have much content in my dying. Go, play with the towns you have built of blocks, those towns where you would have bound me. I sleep in my earth like a tired old fox, and my buffalo have found me. Stephen Vincent Benet.
This was for my favorite dog. His name was Theodore Roosevelt Davis. Called him Ted. Mostly he was good at holding the couch down, but he had his moments. Look at you lying there, cockleburr in your hair, next to what's left of my shoe. I bet $1 that it was the old barn cat who put those scratches on you. Must be one mean dream cow there in your dream corral, or is it a grizzly bear? No matter, little hoss, you'll show 'em who's the boss. So what if you aren't housebroke through and through? Good night, little cowpup. Good night. Good night, little cowpup. Sleep tight. The stars in the blue to watch over you. Good night, little cowpup. Good night. Look at the size of those paws of yours. Heaven knows how big you'll grow up to be. But for now, I'm glad you're just a small ball of fur curled on this porch next to me. Come morning, little guy, we'll ride out, you and I, fix the old windmill again. Check the salt, check the grass, your nose against the glass, and later on you can dig up the lawn. Good night, little cowpup. Good night. Sleep tight, little cowpup. Sleep tight. The stars in the blue to watch over you. Good night, little cowpup. Good night. Good night, little cowpup. Good night. Thank you. Thank you. I think we have a dead guitar up here. Uh-oh. There's always something go wrong. Oh, there we go. I apologize. We're not too technical. We're cowboys. We're cow people.
You know, I come from quite a famous state, North Dakota. You hear about us on the Weather Channel all the time. But you know, it's true. Our lives depend so much on the weather. North Dakota is a very agrarian state, and it's It's a very productive state. It really is. And even though we have a negative image, it's a great food producing state. And like I say, our lives depend so much on the weather. I was born on May 17th, 1949. And that's not so impressive till one day I started backtracking a little bit and I backed up 9 months prior to that date. That would have been mid-August 1948. At that time, my dad had a small wheat farm north of Minot, North Dakota, and that would have been right in the middle of harvest. And it dawned on me one day that I probably owe my very existence to a summer thunderstorm. I never did have the guts to ask Mother about that, but it is true. We live in some violent weather there in North Dakota, and at times, we have wonderful weather, we have bad weather, we got winters, we got long winters, we got all that kind of stuff. And as a public speaker, and I go around the country, sometimes I think I'd be remiss if I didn't touch a little bit on the hardships and those tortures that us rural people go through during those great, terrible blizzards that sweep across the plains. Only those who've ever lived there and who've truly felt the pains know the terror of a blizzard as it screams across the plains. Know forebodings of the rancher when it really starts to blow. Know that sinking kind of feeling when supplies are getting low. It started out one winter night, crossed the border like a shot. It ripped through North Dakota like a mad bull blowing snot. Dean never thought the storm that day would catch him unprepared till he checked his inventory, then realized he dared. There was plenty feed for livestock. There was propane for the stove. The fridge was filled with goodies. There was coffee too, by Jove. Then it struck him like a lightning bolt. His jaw hung swinging loose. He rifled through the grocery sack, but drat, there was no snooze. Now this North Dakota puncher knew that patience was the key. He could make it through the crisis if he used sagacity. Each pinch grew slightly smaller as he rationed out the stuff, but the storm had barely started when he ran plumb out of snuff. Check the garbage for the empties, came the order from this chump. And his family pawed through rubbish like grizzlies at the dump. If they chanced upon a discard, it was quickly passed to Dean, who salvaged every precious flake, then licked the lids off clean. He ate 16 pounds of candy like a hungry, starving moose. He chewed up Fido's pillow 'cause it smelled so much like snooze. Exhaustion finally took its toll, and he trundled off to bed. Dreams of Copenhagen factories soon were dancing through his head. He once snuggled close to Mother, but she smacked him quick and mean. She presumed he was a stranger, 'cause his breath smelled fresh and clean. There's evidently a few snooze chewers out there. Day 2, the storm intensified. There was no relief in sight. Through bloodshot eyes, old Dean surmised he'd survive just one more night. Day 3 finally brought relief. Through the grapevine, word broke loose. A 4-wheel drive was heading south, and he'd bring old Dean some snooze. The pickup came within a mile, and the driver called to say his son would bring the box on foot. Relief now was on the way. Dean was salivating heavily as he waited at the door. The lad stumbled through the snowdrifts, then he fell again once more. The boy arrived exhausted, checked his pockets for the stuff, then admitted to this madman that he must have lost his snuff. Check the back trail, roared the crazed one to his frightened family, and his kinfolk dove through snowbanks like dolphins in the sea. Their efforts were in vain that day, though they searched the way they should. They sifted through 10 tons of snow, but that snuff was lost for good. If that child had been an orphan, Dean would have pumped him full of lead. But he knew his family loved him, so he sat and wept instead. The next time you hear of blizzards and Dakota's in the way, you no longer have to worry, for it's fairly safe to say, though Dean may run low on groceries, bacon, beans, or butterfat, it won't be Copenhagen. You can bet your butt on that. For old Dean has learned his lesson. Hardship truly made him wise. There's no terror like a blizzard when you run low on supplies. Thank you.
It's true. I Told you about Rodney. Well, I don't know about you guys. When I was like going to school, I thought life was going to be pretty linear. I thought, it'd be go to school, get a degree, get married, climb the ladder of success, and you'd work real hard, and it'd be like you'd climb right up this ladder, one rung at a time, and then